What would you do if someone tried to drag you into their car on a deserted highway? These people lived through their worst nightmares on the open road, and some barely made it out alive. Here are their stories. It was 12:17 according to the green clock shining bright from my car's dashboard. I still remember that number as I was driving home from the night shift at the pharmacy where I worked. Taking the highway at this hour was risky since there were no lights, usually no other cars, and deer would frequently walk onto the road. You wouldn't notice them until it was too late if they were in your direct path. That's why I always drove slowly, 50 miles per hour maximum. As the road curved to the left, a clear row of reflective lights appeared on the horizon, which I quickly realized was reflective tape on a row of traffic cones. There was also a flashing blue light in the distance. In front of them stood what seemed to be the reflective material of a safety vest. I was so confused trying to figure out what was happening that it didn't even hit me to slam on the brakes until it was almost too late. The car came to a screeching halt as the tires skidded. The man wearing the reflective vest started walking over, arms outstretched and waving. I guess he was signaling me not to move. As he got closer, I could see what appeared to be a police uniform under the vest. He knocked on my window with his knuckle, so I rolled it down. The man's face became clear. He was black, about 6 feet tall, skinny with slight stubble and a left earring. He looked young, maybe around 25. He spoke in a very low, non-commanding voice, especially for an officer. "License and registration, please," he said. I paused and asked if I'd done something wrong because I definitely wasn't speeding. He paused as well, looked slightly to the left, then back at me. "Sir, this is a sobriety checkpoint," he said in that same unconvincing voice. I asked why he would need my ID and registration if I hadn't been suspected of anything yet. He leaned back from my car and told me to step out of the vehicle to begin the test. I opened my door and stepped out. Immediately, I noticed the cop towered over me. He took a roll of tape from his vest pocket and stretched it on the ground to about 15 feet. He instructed me to step on the end and walk across in a straight line with my arms out to my sides. I completed it easily with no issues, though he stood uncomfortably close behind me the entire time. When I reached the end, I could see that blue flashing light more clearly. It wasn't sitting on top of a police car. It was sitting on some older, small sedan. I looked back at him and asked to see his badge. He just stared at me with the blankiest expression. It started to sink in, and I mean that literally because I felt my heart dropping. This guy wasn't a cop. He said something I couldn't quite make out, but as he walked to his car, I assumed he said, "I'll go get it, 1 second." While he was bent over in his vehicle grabbing something, I bolted back to my car. He looked up as I started the engine and raised a gun toward me. Without hesitation, I slammed the pedal to the floor and accelerated through the traffic cones. I saw the headlights of his car turn on when I was already a few hundred feet away, but by then I was going over 60 miles per hour. There was no way he'd catch me. I got off at the next exit, and as soon as there were streetlights, I turned off my headlights to draw less attention. I only wish I'd had a dash cam to capture it on video. I swear it would have made the news. It was about 4 in the morning one Saturday, and I was driving to work down the interstate. I was in the middle lane moving pretty quickly because I was already running late. When I noticed a car in my left mirror catching up extremely fast, I was almost alarmed. I had to already be going 75 to 80, so this driver had to be doing anywhere from 90 to 100. The car quickly caught up. It was a gray Honda Accord coupe. I glanced inside, curious to see who was behind the wheel. Even though it was still dark, I could see the driver looking back at me as he passed. Then I noticed someone in the back seat too. It was a young woman who appeared to be banging on the rear window. At first, I didn't understand. I assumed it was someone messing around. It's usually not a person's first instinct to assume something sinister is happening. But when I saw the driver apparently shove her down under the window and the car swerve simultaneously, I knew something was horribly wrong. That woman was desperately trying to get someone's attention and call for help. I started to speed up and got behind them so I could keep pace. I could see the driver continuously reach into the back with a swinging motion. He appeared to be hitting her. I could see her arms flailing in the back seat. I was in complete shock. I was actually witnessing a kidnapping right in front of me. As I followed them, matching their speed of about 95 miles per hour, I took out my phone and called 911. While I was on the phone, the car's brake lights lit up and he started to slow to a gradual stop. He definitely noticed I'd seen what was happening and realized I was following him. As much as I wanted to save that woman's life, I didn't know if the driver was armed, so I pulled around him and floored it. I wanted to keep tracking them though, so I pulled off the next exit but didn't go all the way up the ramp. I waited for the car to pass by on the highway, then drove over the grass, back onto the highway, and began accelerating to catch up. All while still talking to 911, I told them where we were, what kind of car they were in, and how fast we were traveling. I was easily doing 90 again to catch up. As I got close, he noticed me before I could even get too near. He started braking in front of me. I tried to go around him, but he cut me off. I had no choice but to stop. He got out of his car and started running toward me with something in his hand. In a panic, I threw the car in reverse until he stopped chasing, then I shifted back to drive before he could return to his vehicle. I sped past him quickly. The 911 operator told me there was a state trooper not far ahead and to just keep driving until I passed him. The man continued to follow me, both of us still going at an insane speed of over 90 miles per hour. I felt a massive weight lift off my shoulders when flashing blue and red lights appeared in my rearview mirror behind the car chasing me. With me in front, him in the middle, and the cop behind, he didn't have much room to maneuver. He quickly pulled over onto the grass. I pulled over in front of him but kept at least 2 car lengths between us because I still didn't know how this would play out. The cop, with his gun drawn, got the guy out of the car with his hands up. Soon he was on the ground in cuffs, lying on his stomach. Another police car showed up. The woman in the back was let out. She was badly beaten, in tears, and extremely grateful to be saved. She kept praising me for saving her life. The driver was her ex-boyfriend who had come to her house. When she refused to talk to him, he attacked her, grabbed her, and threw her in the back of his car, which had the child locks engaged. It's terrifying to think where he might have been taking her or what he was planning to do if I or anybody else hadn't witnessed her screaming for help. Scary things can happen on the road at night. Nighttime is when the creeps come out, so you have to be extra careful. This happened in 2020, right when COVID started. I would often work overnight shifts at a hospital with hours all over the place. I always took the same route home, a parkway that I'd take 10 miles north to my town. It was never busy, even during the daytime, so at night I was almost always completely alone. COVID just made it even more of a ghost town. I never even saw any state police at night either. Usually this was convenient as I got home quicker without any slow drivers around. One night, as I was driving home in the early morning hours, I saw a red flashing SOS light stand perched on the side of the road. It illuminated the taillights of a car parked on the shoulder. Clearly someone needed assistance, and I was in a good mood that night, so I pulled over in front of the vehicle. As I passed, I saw a man waving his arms in the air. I put my hazards on and stepped out to approach him. Based on his skin tone and slight accent, he was Hispanic. Due to the COVID mask he was wearing, I couldn't gauge his age, but I'd guess late 20s or early 30s. I asked what the problem was. He said his battery died after staying pulled over for too long. I asked if he had jumper cables since I didn't. He said no. I didn't really know how else to help other than offering a ride, but then he asked if he could borrow my cell phone. He claimed his had died too. I wasn't eager to hand a stranger my phone, but I did. I unlocked it for him and opened the phone app. He proceeded to call someone, then slowly walked away as he started talking. His car door was open, so I decided to sit in the front seat and try turning the car on myself. Sure enough, the keys were still in the ignition. I turned the key one click to the right, and to my surprise, the battery turned on. I tried the hazards. They worked. I turned on the radio. It worked. so I turned the key once more to start the car, and it started on the first try. I didn't have enough time to process what was happening because as soon as the car turned on, I felt two arms wrap around my throat, trying to choke me. I heard a voice yelling, "Hey, hey, hey," from outside. It was the guy with my phone. I broke out of the grip pretty easily. I looked back and saw it was a young teenage kid in the back seat. The man with my phone was running back toward his car, screaming at me. I chose flight over fight, ran back to my car, and got out of there. As soon as my car was on, I swear I heard a loud pop from outside that I realized moments later was a gunshot. My rear windshield had a hole in it, along with multiple cracks surrounding it. I couldn't call police until I got home since that guy still had my phone. Once home, I told my parents and called 911 using the house phone. I explained that I'd been led into a trap, that someone was hiding in the back seat, and that the man who shot at my car still had my phone with all my personal information on it. The police recommended I call AT&T immediately to track the last call made within the hour, but their customer service didn't open until 7 a.m., so I had to wait. With the cops still there, I used Find My iPhone on my dad's phone to lock mine, hoping I did it before they could find our home address. At 7 a.m., I called AT&T to ask if they could track the last call, but there were no calls logged since my earlier call with my mom the previous day at work. That meant the man never actually made a phone call to anyone. Then I discovered something even worse. All the Bitcoin I was holding in my Coinbase account was gone, many thousands of dollars worth, sent to some random, completely untraceable wallet address. The phone's location stopped updating once the thief either disposed of it or turned it off. I never got it back. A week after this incident, I woke up to my mom's concerned voice. My dad knocked on my door and told me to come downstairs and outside. He said he and my mom heard someone in our backyard, but when they checked, they didn't see anyone. My mom wanted to call the cops, but my dad said we'd hold off until we heard another noise, which we never did. I don't know if what they heard was a person, but if it was, I really hope it wasn't that man who had my phone. My address was saved everywhere on it. Regardless, it's been 2 years now, so it's obviously over. Still, I will never stop to help somebody on a highway at night ever again. I made a trip to visit Boston to support a family member who was running the Boston Marathon. I was driving from Chicago to Massachusetts and had to take Route 20, possibly the longest highway in the United States. I don't like flying much, so I decided to start driving around 3 p.m. after work. My GPS told me it would be a 15-hour drive, so knowing how I drove, it would probably be 14 hours. My ETA said 6 a.m. I was expecting 5 a.m. if I didn't stop. I'm the type who doesn't like making many stops on long car rides. I prefer to just power through the whole thing in one go. Most of Route 20 is open land without much traffic. I'd say about 10 hours in, around 1 a.m., I was basically one of the only cars on the highway. I had music blasting to keep me awake. I was getting slightly tired, even after 2 cups of coffee. I didn't want to pull off for more though, so I pushed through. One moment I was the only car in sight. The next thing I knew, there were headlights in my rearview mirror. I was in the left lane and he was kind of on my tail, so I switched to the right lane. He sped up, past me, then for some reason slowed to match my speed just as my front bumper aligned with his rear bumper. He matched my speed for the longest time. I started to speed up to pass him. As soon as I got in front, he turned into my lane behind me, so close it looked like he was going to clip my car. I had no choice but to speed up even more to get him off my tail. I wasn't looking to be the victim of road rage, not at this hour. As I sped up, so did he. I switched to the left lane, and so did he. Now I knew something was seriously wrong. This couldn't be an unmarked cop. It was some old, ratty pickup truck. The truck started flashing its lights behind me. I didn't slow down. I was honestly afraid because I'd never experienced anything like this on the road. I kept driving, stepping on the gas to increase my speed by 5 to 10 miles per hour, hoping to pass a cop or any other cars. But I couldn't see another set of taillights as far as the eye could see, just the occasional car zooming past on the other side of the highway. The pickup truck switched lanes and floored it. I heard the aggressive roar of his engine as he passed me. He cut in front, then started braking. I tried to swerve around him, but he kept blocking me. I was forced to stomp on the brakes too. I started honking because it was all I could do. As we slowed, the man put on his hazards and started waving his arm out the window, signaling for me to pull to the side of the road. I obviously didn't listen. I took the chance to quickly pull around him as he started pulling onto the grass, then I floored it. My sedan could easily escape his pickup truck, but I hit 100 and he was still not far behind. I got off the highway at the first exit. I stopped at the red light at the end of the ramp, not expecting him to still be behind me, but he was. The pickup truck pulled up next to me at the light. I looked left at the truck and the window rolled down. Inside were 3 people, presumably men, wearing Vendetta masks. They all looked at me, clearly trying to scare me, and it worked. I blew the red light onto the main road. Finally, there were other cars around. The pickup truck stopped following me at a certain point. I was scared I was going to be killed. It was more than just road rage. I didn't get the plate number. In fact, I don't even remember seeing a plate on that truck. All I know is it was some 90s black pickup. After that, I parked in a Walmart parking lot and fell asleep. I woke up around 8 a.m. and finished the drive. I told my family about the incident and warned everybody to be careful when driving late at night. I was taking a drive from Maine to Upper New York to spend the week with family. I left right after work around 5:30, so I didn't anticipate getting there until past 1 in the morning. I had the top off my Jeep Wrangler so I could enjoy the hot weather. I was somewhere in Vermont, well past midnight, when the gas light flicked on and the car started beeping. Unfortunately, the gas gauge was broken, so there was no way to tell how much gas was left. I'd been told by my brother, who drove the car the previous day, that he'd filled it to the top. Clearly he was either mistaken or lying because I hadn't used anywhere near a full tank's worth. One of those blue service signs zoomed past. I could see a gas station symbol, so I turned off that exit onto a desolate road. A few seconds later, the acceleration stopped and the car came to a helpless halt. I couldn't believe it, but I'd actually run out of gas. I hopped out and got on the phone with AAA, telling them my exact location. They said they could have someone out to me in at least 20 minutes. I was grateful but annoyed I'd be waiting. For about 15 minutes, I just strolled around my car slowly, looking down at my phone, texting friends about the situation and checking social media. It was so quiet. No sounds of distant traffic, no passing cars, just the sound of crickets and other night creatures in the woods. Then I heard something walking around in the woods. The footsteps were decently heavy, so I figured it was a deer or something, but the possibility of it being a bear wasn't far-fetched given this was bear country. I walked around to the passenger side where the woods were, just hoping to see a deer or some harmless animal. Then there were 2 clapping sounds. It actually sounded like a person clapping their hands. I moved closer to listen for it again. This time it was 3 claps. I called out to the woods, hoping in some weird way that someone would answer, but after I did, the clapping stopped. I just stood there waiting for something to happen, but it was just silence. So I got back in the car and waited. I heard footsteps once again coming from the woods, heading in my direction. Then they just stopped. I looked outside and saw a head peeking from behind a tree just ahead. It almost looked lifeless. The eyes just looked so lifeless. I couldn't even tell if they were looking at me or not. I was so focused on these details I didn't even think to scream at the horror of what I was witnessing. I cranked the windows up on both sides and turned off the headlights. However, hiding in the car didn't make me feel much safer since the entire top was off. Without the headlights, there was complete darkness. I couldn't see 2 inches in front of me, yet I was surrounded by the night noises of the forest. I was ducking down below the dashboard, doors locked but still completely exposed to the outside, praying not to hear any sudden sounds like footsteps. I felt that sinking feeling in my stomach as I heard someone grab the car door handle. I tried my best not to move or make any noise. I was waiting for someone to start pounding at the glass or reach around the opening behind the front door to unlock it. I was so exposed it wasn't even funny. Then I felt a hand aggressively grab onto my back. I simply lost it and screamed at the top of my lungs. Suddenly the hand released its grip on my shirt as light began to fill the area, and the sound of a truck engine pulling up the road was music to my ears. I sat up and turned around to see the headlights of a AAA truck, but whoever was grabbing me was long gone. I ran outside to greet the man who stepped out. He was a big dude in his 40s. I basically cried to him about what just happened, taking huge breaths between each sentence. Something about his personality and presence was calming and reassuring. He filled my car up with gas and we both went our separate ways. Even though his presence calmed me down, the memory of what happened that night is still haunting, and the image of that lifeless head peering around that tree is imprinted in my brain. It was a Tuesday night in March. I was driving back from a friend's house in the city, a trip that would take about an hour in decent weather. But a deep fog had set in on the long, lonely highway after midnight. This particular stretch of road was often abandoned except for the odd semi with license plates showing unfamiliar lettering and colors from places I'd never been. It was 1 a.m. It had been a long day wandering around for hours with my friends, shopping, checking out new cafes. It left me tired. My eyelids were heavy, and the impenetrable fog made the highway an unending, drifting mess of hypnotizing gray. I drove cautiously, at times slowing to a steady crawl and flashing my hazard lights to let anyone behind me know I was there. Suddenly, a vehicle appeared, its wheels half on the highway and half on the shoulder. I slammed on my brakes and pulled over behind it, narrowly passing by the bumper. My heart was beating heavily after the near miss, so I put my car in park to catch my breath. Behind the black sedan, I watched as the car began slowly rolling forward off the road until it was fully parked on the shoulder. The car sat for a moment, then the driver's side window rolled down. An arm appeared and did a waving motion, signaling me to pull over. At this point, the adrenaline from the sudden stop was still pumping through my body, and it made sense to move further off the road. I followed the car as it took a slight turn onto a side road. It came to a stop and the driver's door opened. The driver walked toward me through the fog, a tall, lean guy wearing a black winter jacket and jeans. He looked younger, maybe 30-ish, and he was smiling as he approached my car, illuminated by my headlights. I rolled down my window a crack, thinking maybe he was coming to apologize for his unsafe parking. He got to my window and motioned for me to roll it down further. I shook my head no, feeling uneasy, and told him I'd be able to hear him. He asked where I was heading. I said home. He said the fog wasn't supposed to let up anytime soon and that it wasn't safe to drive in. I let him know I was okay with it. He raised his eyebrows and asked why I pulled over then. I didn't want to start anything with this man, so I lied and said I'd gotten a phone call and needed to pull over to answer it. He smirked, and it felt like he could tell I was lying. He said he lived with his wife and son just down the road, about 5 minutes away, if I wanted to wait it out. I shook my head again, but he wasn't taking no for an answer. He tried to scare me, saying how it's 10 times more likely to die in a car crash when it's foggy and that I looked tired. He said I should really think of my family before getting back on the road. I held my ground. He was getting angry. He began looking back at his car, and I saw someone move in the passenger seat I hadn't noticed before. Suddenly the man was grabbing at my door handle, trying to open it. Thankfully it was locked. The passenger door to his car opened and another man came running toward me with a baseball bat. I put my car in reverse and the driver yelled something at him. As I hit the gas, the other man took a swing at my car but missed. Luckily, I hadn't pulled too far off the highway, but it was hard to tell where this road ended and the highway began in the heavy fog. As I backed up, I turned my wheels and put my car in drive, praying there was no traffic coming up behind me. I floored it as I merged onto the highway, not looking back. I often wonder when I'm driving that stretch of road if they tried to stop anyone else that night and what would have happened to me had I rolled my window down further. It happened on a night when I was the designated driver among my group of friends after a party. My friends were Michael, Eddie, and Daniela. We live in the country, so any time we wanted to go to the bars or parties, we'd have to travel long distances. That's why it's such a big deal for one of us to be sober enough to drive. We were driving down the 513, an unlit highway littered with the occasional house or two but mostly forest. The road leads to town where most of the bars are. This story takes place on the way back from town. Daniela started crying that she had to pee really bad. I told her she'd have to wait a while longer, but I started to get the urge as well. That, mixed with the fact that Daniela was now screaming in her drunken state, made me figure why not pull over and just go somewhere in the woods. Daniela got out first and disappeared into the crops on one side. I went to the opposite side of the road and slightly into the woods, just because I'm the type of person who can't have people watching me. I finished first and got back in the car. Eddie and Michael were singing to the loud music playing on the radio while I sat there in silence, growing impatient. My two drunk friends didn't seem to find anything strange about the fact that Daniela had now been gone for 5 minutes. So I got back out to call her name. Michael has a much stronger voice than I do, so when he screamed for her, it would be impossible for her not to hear, but still she didn't call back. I didn't want to go into those crops, but I felt like I had to since she's my friend and I was the most aware at that moment. I forced Michael to come with me since I was afraid to go in alone. Eddie stayed in the car. He was just too far gone at this point. With the flashlight from my glove box, Michael and I pushed our way through the thick, overgrown crops, walking in the only direction we could think to go, straight away from the car. Michael was calling Daniela's name while laughing. I can understand why he was finding it funny in his condition, but I just wanted to make sure she was all right and get home. Over the sounds of our own footsteps brushing crops aside and Michael's laughter, I heard something else in the near vicinity. I put my arm out to Michael's chest to halt him. Now all that could be heard was the night breeze blowing through the crops. "What is it?" he whispered, to which I responded, "Shoo." Michael called out Daniela's name again. I joined in, figuring it was just her trying to sneak up on us and scare us. And again, the footsteps stopped. So we walked a little deeper into the crops. That's when we came to a narrow clearing, a stretch probably the width of 2 people, just enough to walk through. I looked to my left as far down as the light would let me see, and then to the right. I could hear footsteps and then a couple of crops pushed outward into the opening as somebody stepped into view. At first, my light was only revealing their legs, so by default, given the circumstances, I assumed it was Daniela. However, the light revealed it to be not Daniela, but instead some random man I'd never seen before. His facial features weren't clear enough to give a good description, but he didn't look friendly. I ran for it, back in the only direction I remembered coming from. I guess I ran so fast that it only took me about 10 seconds to make it back to the car. Eddie was passed out at this point, so I didn't bother trying to get help from him. I was honking the horn to get Michael's and hopefully Daniela's attention. The sight of that man just disturbed me. I didn't know if he owned this land or not. I continued to lay on the horn until finally Michael came out of the crops, dragging Daniela, who seemed to be out cold. I got out to help him lift her back inside the car. Michael pointed out the gash on her forehead, as if she'd been struck with a heavy, sharp object. Michael seemed to be sobering up pretty quickly due to the situation. He advised I drive to the nearest hospital, which was 10 minutes away. The drive there was full of panic and yelling. We brought Daniela in to have her wound treated as soon as possible. It was only then that Michael explained to the nurses, not me, that he'd seen some guy dragging her collapsed, unconscious body before fleeing deeper into the crops after noticing him. He never mentioned that in the car, but it made perfect sense now. That man in the crops with us that night did this. Daniela was awake after she got all stitched up, and she had no recollection of the entire night, from the moment we stepped into the party to the moment she got struck in the head.